First thing I would like to say is thank you for showing up for part 2, and a few things. The next details about this character and why it accidentally predicted some of the plot points of future FNAF games from when it was originally created are kind of spoilers for the story that I was going to write back then and that I might actually pursue now that I actually like my character again. So, I will tell you when the spoilers start kicking in. As for right now, I would just like to say that later on into the video, you're going to see a white box covering up part of my drawing. And the reason I'm doing that is because I know YouTube's AI is kind of funky when it comes to identifying nudity. And although the character is naked in the sense that they are not wearing their costume, it is supposed to be a robot. And it's like one of those dolls that has sculpted on underwear sort of situation. And I know from watching doll painting videos that will get you in trouble, so I'm gonna cover it up so I can show you what the final costume is. And that's the next thing I forgot to mention last time, is that all of the animatronics from the location where she has removable costumes that aren't sewn attached, so they can be cleaned separately. Specifically for the two females of the group, Chica and Melody here, they have full-on dresses that can be fully removed so that they can have access to their maintenance areas. Another thing I forgot to mention that is just something unique to this story is that Melody is not made of a hard plastic. Her cheeks are, but her actual body is made of a hard plastic with silicone on top to make her squishy and soft. Because the whole point of these her models from her pizzeria is that they're supposed to be way safer versions to sort of bring back customers of Freddy Fazbear, because I thought no way people would want to come back after knowing all the horror stories unless they thought it was completely safe. And that's sort of I think I used to call them the Friendly Friends Fazbear line. I'm going to call them from now on the Fazbear Friends line, just because it sounds a lot better. But, enough of the little background details. Eventually you're gonna see how the dresses normally wear. They're elaborate little costumes and shit. But let me talk about how her storyline in particular accidentally predicted some future things. So, in FNAF 4, we did not know the full extent of the Afton family. And so, and the real story behind what happened to the puppet and who the puppet really was at that point in the story. That's when we got the most lore when it comes to characters, right? So everything I said was made during that time, a little bit after FNAF 4, but before FNAF 5 with sister locations. So I had no idea any of this was going to pop in the lore, and it was just me trying to rationalize what I thought was really shitty character design, because I didn't trust myself back then. And boy, was it a weird sensation to find out Scott was going to go down a very similar story path. So this is where the spoiler portion is. So I'm going to give you a small pause, and then I'm going to start. Okay, so if you're still here, you're probably either not really interested in getting spoiled for my story if it ever becomes a webcomic, or you're simply just really curious. So basically, she has an incredibly dangerous endoskeleton compared to the others, and she's also way more intelligent than the other animatronics, and she's in fact the reason why the other animatronics are as intelligent as they are, because she actually shares her AI with the others to make them just as smart as she is, because she has a special AI chip. Now, this information the characters learn about early on, and when I mean the characters, I mean we follow the adventures of a night guard who is, I don't know if I mentioned this before, the story takes place from the perspective of a night guard who's actually a cop who wants to not do the desk work job for a cop. He wants to be a full-on detective, but they don't want to give him a chance because they think he's reckless, and so now he's working here to try to solve the case on his own. And And here's another spoiler, real fast. Yeah, you know, bringing back a restaurant known for child murders did not work out in their favor because more kids ended up getting killed. Surprise, surprise, because I am not original, and I thought that would be really funny. It was just like, oh yeah, they try to stop the original killer and any possible connection from the old place, but instead all they did was invite new killers into the establishment, which is a whole nother thing that's not important. So here comes why she has an extra dangerous endoskeleton, and why she originally had an AI chip, and why her endoskeleton has a built-in speaker to produce hypnotic things to give hallucinations. And the answer I came to is someone needed to have built her endoskeleton for the purpose of luring in and killing people. And so I decided two things. The first thing I decided is that her AI chip was designed by a weeping father who was trying to recreate the consciousness of his daughter who died after he kind of left her alone for too long, and she kind of succumbed to her sadness, if you know what I mean. And so he felt guilty because he was hyper focused on his robotics and didn't have time to notice something was wrong with his own daughter. Who does that sound like? Oh, and it gets worse because his co-worker, who he ends up getting the dangerous endoskeleton from, is just a mad monster who likes building killer robots in hopes to kill people because he himself is already a murderer. And he just thinks it's funny to use robots to kill people. And so he's just an evil bastard. And they just so happen to work at the same robotics facility. And yeah, do you know what that sounds like? Let's see. A man who is way too focused into his robots loses his daughter and recreates her in the form of an artificial intelligence whose co-workers with an evil mad scientist who wants to make killer robots to lure in and kill people. I had accidentally predicted the relationship between William Afton and Henry Emily. Oh my god, was I so happy but also so disturbed by how similar these storylines are. And it gets like a little weird, right? Because now the reason why the two of them ended up like combining their creations was actually completely by accident. In this version of the story, it is illegal to create AIs this advanced in their world. Why? Because I figured that the government would not be happy with artificial intelligence that can just keep learning and growing, because they could be a endangerment to society. And so his creation of an AI that would learn and grow and basically recreate the consciousness of his daughter was technically very illegal. And one of his coworkers actually ratted him out because they figured out what he was doing. At the same time, Mr. wants to build a murder robot, is building this dangerous robot endoskeleton, and they both see that the cops are coming and they freak out. And so they decide individually that they're going to hide their creations in the next delivery and then try to pick it up later. Like, go find the restaurant and then go get their creations. So, not knowing that his coworker is an evil mad scientist trying to make murder robots, he puts his AI chip in what he thinks is just a strange-looking endoskeleton, and then tries to help move it to the assembly line. But he stops because he has to run because the police are on his tail. And then the guy who made the evil endoskeleton notices that his creation has been moved, but decides that he doesn't have time for this shit because he needs to hide it somewhere because people will notice that he's making an evil robot. And so he just ends up putting the suit of Melody on it and then shoving what chips it could into the machine that would make it pretend that it's an animatronic, or at least look like an animatronic to an outside source. And then they put it on the assembly line. And so Melody has this problem where each of the Fazbear Friends robots have a free chip system, and she only has 2 chip slots because she wasn't really meant to be working at that facility. A story of how I accidentally predicted things. Thanks for watching.